Mill suddenly invited me on family trips after years of no. I later learned they invited me since I was a free nanny and maid. I, 29F, have been married to Ryan, 33M, for 2 years. Everything's been perfect with us, except that he never takes me on his annual family trips. Literally ever. It has been our lone disagreement, and I have never understood why he would do it. We learned about his family's 2-day annual vacation the first year we dated. Considering my unhealthy family, I felt it was a cool ritual. My parents divorced, so we never did this. I looked forward to family activities like this after we married. We had been dating for a while, so I expected him would ask me to go the second year. We lived together and were serious. His lack of a question made things unpleasant, but after that, I didn't think much and assumed he was waiting for us to get married to go on these excursions. Even last year, after 2 months of marriage, he didn't ask me to go. After being dissatisfied, I asked him why he hadn't invited me on the vacation before he went. He seemed confused and said he expected I wouldn't want to go with them. I don't know why he did it, because I had constantly told him I enjoyed the idea of family excursions and would have loved to join one. He knew I had a strange childhood as a divorced child. I enjoyed such activities. Not that I didn't like his family. I was loved by his parents, older sister, her husband, and kids. I got along with everyone, so I didn't understand why he didn't want me to join them. Last year we argued before he departed for the vacation because he hadn't invited me, even though I'd indicated interest. That insulted me, therefore I was outraged. I confronted him and fought over it because I thought I needed to find out. A couple of days before he was set to leave for the trip with his family, we battled, and I asked him why he hadn't invited me, even though I'd expressed interest. Because as my spouse, he should have knew I wanted to go with him and spend time with his family. He finally admitted that his family felt uncomfortable with my accompanying him, not simply because he imagined I wouldn't want to. That stung me since I had always assumed I got along with them, as I described earlier, and they had never seemed uncomfortable around me. I didn't expect that because they always treated me like family when I visited. He informed me he had given me another explanation and lied to spare my feelings, but his family still wasn't comfortable with me traveling with them. They didn't mind me visiting them on key occasions and holidays, and a journey was important. They were unprepared. They thought bringing me would be difficult, so they wanted to spend a few more years with me, get to know me, and then invite me. It was odd for my sister-in-law's husband to be on these excursions because they were high school sweethearts, and my husband's family had known him for a long time. They weren't ready for me, and as painful as it was, I had to accept that. I couldn't push myself on them if they didn't like me. I couldn't blame Ryan because it wasn't his fault. I had to concede. I was perplexed about my feelings, so I let him depart without further comment. When he was gone for a week, I did some reflection and decided to attempt to make myself part of the family so my in-laws feel comfortable taking me on a trip and don't have to act formal and courteous around me. I attempted to comprehend their perspective and made sure they felt comfortable around me in the next few months, going out of my way because I didn't get along with my family. I also don't want strained connections with my in-laws. You probably know I'm a people pleaser by now. I wanted my in-laws to like me, so after my husband told me they weren't comfortable with me yet, I tried to be polite to them. After they returned from the trip, Ryan told them about our earlier discussion, and we had a family discussion where they apologized for not inviting me and explained that Ryan and his sister were always busy and didn't get to spend time with their family. Ryan, an investment banker, is stressed, and his sister and her spouse are doctors. They're also usually busy. They still see their parents occasionally, but they wanted to continue this tradition. They regretted not realizing this would make me feel excluded and apologized deeply. They also promised to meet me halfway and make me feel like part of the family. After that much-needed discussion, I determined to get to know them independently, which is why I started going out of my way. Even without my hubby visiting his folks, I would still attempt to visit them every 2 weeks. We had fun anytime I visited them. At least that's my interpretation. My company seemed to please them. Anyone in my place would have felt the same way because they put on fake joyful expressions, and it was hard to tell if they were faking. Anyway, I figured they appreciated my visit, so I kept doing it. I would visit periodically. They promised to meet me halfway and make me feel like family, so I had no reason to think these visits were bothering them. This year, they gave my husband the reason they didn't invite me again. That crushed my heart since I had tried to be a part of the family and help them as their daughter-in-law, but it was all in vain. I was devastated when I learned this a few days ago since I thought my in-laws and I were getting along and I could join the family trip this year. Ryan informed me last week that the family had decided to visit California this year for annual vacation. I was excited since I assumed I would be on that trip this year, but he kept talking about it without mentioning me. When I asked him if I would be on the trip this year, he seemed upset and said that his parents hadn't mentioned anything about it. But I knew he was lying, so after some convincing, He finally told me that his parents had said that they were done with me because I visited them too often and needed some space. I was accused of trying too hard and pushing my presence on them, despite their apparent request for space. They never explained what they were talking about, and every time I visited or spoke to them, they seemed to relish it. I told Ryan, and he said he tried to persuade his parents, but they were stubborn and stated I wasn't welcome this year. I was unhappy and fought Ryan because I wanted him to pass on the trip if I couldn't, since I thought his parents were unjust to me. They had promised to get to know me and incorporate me. I tried so hard to get to know them. Now they were acting like I was upsetting them. I found that offensive. I tried to tell Ryan not to treat me this way. I didn't like his parents' behavior, but he told me he needed this annual vacation to spend time with his family and would have wanted to take me, but his parents were against it. He couldn't dispute them. He claimed to see both sides, which was stupid because I don't think his parents have a point and think they're just fickle-minded and making me look terrible for wanting to get along with them. Instead of making up reasons, they should have told me they didn't want me. Anyway, we had a big fight and I told him I didn't want him to go on the trip and wanted him to stick up for me. But he claimed I was ridiculous and petty and went anyway. This family's treatment of me after he left on vacation disappointed me. My parents have never been really attached to me, so when I met my in-laws, I assumed they might like me better. Even now, my parents and I rarely talk. I envied Ryan's family relationship and wanted to join it. I don't think it was wrong to want to get their approval. I may have overdone it, but they stated they would attempt to make me feel like part of the family. I also noted how my sister-in-law's spouse and I were handled differently. I only wanted their affection. My attempt wasn't wrong. These ideas kept repeating in my head, and I felt awful for myself because I felt that Ryan didn't care about me either. I could forgive his family for treating me terribly, but not him. I considered leaving before he returned from his. I was astonished when he called 2 days after leaving. I didn't answer the phone the first time because I was mad at him, but he texted me and said it was an emergency and I had to answer. After that, he FaceTimed me. I was surprised to see his whole family. His parents, sister, and brother-in-law stood behind him, all hesitant to talk to me. It was confusing, and when I asked him to explain, he said everyone was come to apologize to me. That was a great surprise. He also informed me that he had told his parents what I had said and that he had, so they realized they had been mistaken and wanted to fly down to them and stay with them for the rest of the trip. His parents also told me that Ryan had spoken to them, and that they had realized that I was being treated unfairly and were ashamed of their actions because they had been selfish and hadn't considered how I would feel. My mother-in-law even shed a tear or two as they apologized, telling me that Ryan had told them that I had only been trying to get them to me and that they had been selfish and inconsiderate. And they wanted to make it up to me by inviting me along for the rest of the trip and would be heartbroken if I declined. People would understand if I declined. They genuinely wanted me involved. I felt disrespected earlier, therefore I was puzzled on the phone. I love Ryan and believe in second chances. My goal was to work with him. I said I'd think about it. I offered to join them that night. After considering it, I think everyone deserves a second shot. I bought tickets and flew down. I was met at the airport by them, and we drove to an Airbnb, which surprised me because I thought they would stay in since we were all rich. But the place they were staying in was far from the city's bustling and secluded, so they had to use an Airbnb because there were no hotels with unoccupied rooms nearby, and the ones that were bad. It was near the beach but far from anything else, which was wonderful if you think about it. The only drawback was that they had to do everything themselves. That's not my husband's family's norm. Not even Ryan. As a child, my parents were rarely home, so I had to do everything myself, from cooking to laundry. I kept doing that as I grew up. We have a housekeeper, but I prefer doing some things myself. Ryan grew raised in a house with folks for anything they wanted. Since the Airbnb offered no cleaning or room service, they had to cook and clean. Even though the journey was only 8 days, they didn't enjoy it, so once I was there, they started assigning all those chores to me in a stealthy way so I wouldn't suspect. Poor them, I'm not stupid. I may be a people pleaser, but I won't sacrifice my dignity to be their unpaid babysitter and cook. When they arrived, they claimed that no one could help them. All hotels were full, so they couldn't move. They were upset since everyone was exhausted, and they were meant to be on vacation, so they had to do everything themselves. I understood their hint, and then they tried to give me all the work. Pretended to help me, but claimed they were looking forward to having me around since I was the best at this. Then they made the mistake of asking me to stay with my sister-in-law's kids the next morning while they went touring. I lost it when I realized what was happening. Late at night, they told me there were no empty motels nearby. I informed them that if this was the real reason they asked me on the vacation, I should remain home. They tried to calm me down by saying they didn't mean to offend me, but I understood, and that they only wanted me as a free nanny and cook. I wouldn't tolerate that, so I told them I'd either stay as family or leave. After that, they had to admit that they had only invited me to have someone extra for my sister-in-law's children since their nanny had collapsed and could not join them on the vacation. My mother-in-law's notion was a unique form of disrespect. I was furious when I learned the real reason they invited me, which contradicted their apologies, but my in-laws swore they meant all they said. They told me they would be devastated if I left because they wanted me to be there for the rest of the vacation. And it didn't matter if I didn't want to help with chores, they would do it themselves, and I could relax in return. I stayed after their apologizing and pleading. As long as they didn't ask me. Then I could receive a free vacation, and I knew I would get back at them because they had expected I would suffer this disrespect. And I had a plan for when we would return home. Because of how they treated me, they handled all the housework while I relaxed for the rest of the holiday. Taking revenge, I relaxed in my chamber. Yesterday was our last day together, and by the time we got to the airport, I could tell everyone was mad at me because I had kept my word and wouldn't work. I saw through their attempts to be kind to me. Fortunately, I had a plan to prove to them that fighting me was pointless. After we boarded the airplane yesterday, I waited a few minutes and my plan was realized when 2 of my friends joined us. They were with us throughout the procedure. After I greeted 2 of my in-laws, they realized what was going on. Since I booked my flights individually, I sat away from my family. Since I flew down here and they mistreated me by believing I would become their servant for the vacation and take advantage of my compassion, I had been talking to my friends about it for the last couple of days. They were upset too, so we decided to go home together and take a road trip. I was sitting 1 row behind my in-laws when they noticed me with my buddies and inquired what was up. I informed Ryan of my approvals from the prior 2 days. The day after they insulted me, I talked to my buddies and arranged this. One buddy lived in California, so it was easy for her, and the other had to travel down, but it was worth it. I had them fly down here and take me home since I didn't want to fly with them. I wanted to show them their place, so we prepared this instead of flying them to my hometown. I was being kind to them. Since they showed me their true colors, they should see mine. After explaining everything to Ryan, he told me it was very petty of me, and that he didn't want me departing for a cross-country road trip with my friends as soon as we returned home, since it would be inconvenient for him, but I assured him it didn't matter. I told him I was leaving him after he showed me he had no spine and could never stand up to his parents for me. This was another reason I requested my friends to join me on the journey home so I would have more support when I confronted him and told him what I would do. I had spoken to my lawyer, who was preparing the divorce paperwork. Upon returning from the road trip, I would petition for divorce. I didn't even want to go home with him after everything that happened. He had let his parents disrespect me before, but this time they went too far. My buddies also supported me. They told him I had decided and could not change my mind. Since the 2 of them were here, he couldn't even convince me to give them another chance. On the way home, everyone was furious, and when I informed him I was leaving him, we didn't speak for the whole flight, which I liked. I was sitting just behind him, but I didn't care because I was so excited to see my buddies again. These 2 women were with me since middle school, but we split up after college and beyond. Ryan disapproved of my association with them and had me distance myself from them after we got into a relationship. I did as he asked because I'm a weakling. He thought these 2 ladies were excessively manipulative and that I had become a doormat for them, which was dumb. I believed him. I put him first and ignored everything else because I wanted him. Now that I knew he was spineless, I told my pals and they supported me. We parted ways. I didn't go home to pack for the road trip, I just bought new clothes on the way and wouldn't be around Ryan or his family. They didn't talk to me once we landed yesterday. After I boarded the airplane with my friends and told them I was leaving him, they stopped acknowledging me. But this morning, he sent me a long text expressing he was unhappy in my behavior. He told me that he was ready to accept that his parents were being horrible to me, and that he had been wrong to not stand up for me, but he wanted me to think about this from his perspective, and that he couldn't disrespect his parents. He didn't know what his mother was doing because she just told me why she wanted me to go see my sister-in-law, not him. I shouldn't blame him because he didn't know they wanted me to cook, clean, and babysit. He said he felt awful about everything, and wanted to make things right with me, so he wanted me to go on this road trip and return. If I didn't do that, it meant I never loved him, and now I'm puzzled. I know he's manipulating me, but part of me thinks I should at least talk it out with him, because I never gave him a chance to explain, because we didn't want to cause a scene on the flight home. Anyway, I told my friends. They strongly oppose talking to him and want me to block him and move on. I know they're right, but I want a second opinion to be sure I'm doing it right. AITA for leaving my husband because he didn't defend me to his parents? Update 1. Thanks for all the comments, even the harsh ones. My rose-colored glasses prevented me from seeing that Ryan was always going to manipulate me and had been a red sign from the start. I won't go back now that my pals and you guys helped me realize it. I blocked him, and am going on a road trip with my pals to rekindle our connection after Ryan broke it. Update 2. I just spoke to my lawyer and he said the divorce paperwork are ready and I may file the petition after the road trip. This is good because I'm returning home in a few days and filing for divorce. I haven't heard from my in-laws or Ryan. I'm glad he didn't call me since I don't want to talk to him. My pals and I have enjoyed the road trip, reminiscing about the good old days. Wow. I can't believe I left this for Ryan. Update 3. I've been back from my road trip for 2 months. We are in settlement negotiations for the divorce, which began a while ago. Since Ryan's family convinced him I was the bad guy and he didn't need me back, things are going well. I'm grateful they did because it made my divorce easier. He acts like I'm the villain and doesn't want anything from me. He's too good for me. Good for him, he and I deserve better.